morning. Since yesterday we talked about purpose in the bigger picture, I want to talk about purpose in the smaller picture today. And in the smaller picture I mean the day-to-day life in the lab and your PhD in general. So I was doing a lot of experiments in my first and second year that were just to look what's happening really. And to try out different methods and see if there's something in it. And obviously if you're starting something new, you will have to do some of these experiments that just try and figure out if there's something that you can, some differences in treatments, or if there's something that you can figure out with this method, or some questions that can be answered with these methods. But I recommend that you do not spend too much time on that. And while you're doing it, try and learn as much as possible about the method you're using. And the main question here, as it was left yesterday, is why. So why are you doing this? And the important thing about that is, if you know why you're doing it, that means that answers the question, do you actually need this method or a different one? Because you need to know what is the question I actually want to answer. And when you know that, you can be more targeted about your approach. And you will always measure things that you measure alongside to actually measure conditions that you are working in, or some possible side effects, and you might end up finding something that you didn't expect in those, like, say, side effects, and keep focusing on them. That's normal, that's science. But what I want to say is, if you know why you're doing this one measurement and the other one, and also for all these side measurements, why are you doing them? Why do you think it might be important to note that? It will make your work much more focused and much more efficient. And the same is true for learning a new method. So if you learn how to use a certain instrument, for example, try and figure out, why are you doing this? Why are you using that setting and not a different one? Why are you changing chemicals in it? Or why are you, whatever it is you're doing with that instrument, right? If you understand how it works and how the functioning of that instrument is, you can troubleshoot much easier. So if something goes wrong within the experiment, and it will go wrong, right? Just anticipate it's going to go wrong at some point, and you will have to troubleshoot, and usually you have to troubleshoot relatively quickly because you're in the middle of a measurement, and that one measurement might not be useful, but you might want to have the next measurement running and being useful, and you may only have like a certain amount of time because you're measuring every 20 minutes or something. So if you know about this piece of equipment, then you can think, okay, if that doesn't work and that doesn't work, well, then it's probably this problem, and that's how I can solve it. Can I solve it in this short amount of time, or do I have to cancel the experiment and do everything on another day, right? And there are loads of these decisions that you have to make in your PhD, and that can be actual experiment related or instrument related, but that can also be in the write-up or in the literature review, like going down a route, a line of thought that is supposed to lead you somewhere, but then you can't find the exact papers that give you the evidence for it, and then you have to kind of reframe and rephrase it, but because you know the whole mechanism that you want to describe, you can take that different pathway. You might even be able to find a different way of explaining what people did explain before, and then you can write a review about that. So what I'm saying here is that's a lot of different routes that I'm going down, like I'm poking into now the routes of instruments, like the very small, like how does that function, and then the next bigger step, like how does my experiment function, and then the next bigger step is how does the paper function, or how does my thesis function as an entire thing, or a chapter of my thesis. And you may need that in all of them. So keep asking why. and keep trying to answer that question for you. And if you're doing something and that thought springs to your mind, it's like, so why am I doing that? And you can't answer it, stop doing what you're doing. Go have a tea or a coffee or whatever you need to calm down. Sit down and think about it. Because chances are you're doing something that's not getting you anywhere. And the sooner you find that out, the more time you save. It might be vital to go down there and find out that it's not taking you anywhere. We all need these dead ends, I think. It's part of the thought process. But yes, if you find that out, think again. And if you don't know why you're doing it, ask people around you. Ask your supervisor why he said that would be a useful thing to do, or why did that person recommend this method, or whatever it is that you don't know why you're doing it. And I think that's what I'm leaving you with today. I'll see you again tomorrow, and keep smiling.